Once again, good morning and welcome to our Mathematics 9 class. Today we are going to talk about the last lesson. It must be lesson 8.2, all about the law of cosines. Yesterday, we have talked about the law of sines. And remember, we use the law of sines once there is one complete set of angle and side. And if there's a complete set, you can use that to solve for the other missing angles and other missing sides. Now, this morning, we are going to have the law of cosines. Give me a moment first. Now to start with, let's recite today's memory verse. And it's found in, why can't I move? There. In Ecclesiastes 1 verse 15. It says, what is crooked cannot be straightened, and what is lacking cannot be counted. Your VCA boosters today is deciphering God's plan for you. It means, how will you know what is God's plan for you? For you to get the correct answer, you need to use the correct formula. Because actually, not all triangles can be solved with SOHCAHTOA, right? Only the right triangle can be solved with SOHCAHTOA. And not all oblique angles can be solved with law of sines or law of cosines. You need to choose one. You need to evaluate the given sides and angles to use which law to use, or else you end up with the wrong answer. How about God's plan for you? Have you deciphered it? Living your life without talking with God is like using the law of sines when three sides are given. It means if there are three sides, there's no complete set. You took too much time in solving. You took much time in walking. Yet you end up with a wrong answer, and that is the wrong path. Now, you need to write a prayer of guidance, asking God to help you in deciphering His plan for you. At the end of today's class, you'll be able to illustrate the law of cosines, and second, solve problems involving oblique triangles. So what do you expect in our quiz today or in your workbook? It's similar to yesterday. There are three figures, and you need to solve for the missing sides and angles. And there's also three different problems. Now, here's our venture with me today. Yesterday, we have talked about different triangles in nature, like the succulents, the flower, the dorsal in the dolphin, and also a volcano. And this morning, I'm going to share to you about the Mayon volcano. In the Philippines, it's called a perfect cone. That's why it becomes one of our tourist attractions. And you can read here, also in the mall and in your module, the legend of the Mayon volcano. Actually, they say it's one of the love stories that you can read about a legend. Now let's start with today's lesson. In the law of sines, you can use it when there is an ASA, like two angles, one side, or two sides, one angle. Or remember, the law of sines can be used when there is one complete pair, one angle and one side. But if we have three sides, like this one, the SSS, or we have the side, angle side, then we can use the law of cosines. So again, when do we use the law of cosines? When there's two sides and one included angle, or there are three sides. Now, what is the formula for the law of cosines? If you're looking for side A, then side B and C and cosine A can be given. That's going to be B squared plus C squared minus 2BC, means this 2, multiply cosine A. If you're looking for B, that's B squared equals A squared plus C squared minus 2AC cosine B. And the same for C. Now, what if it's the angle that is missing? From this equation, we can derive it to this one. So you can take a photo of this, or you can take down notes, and this will be used once we are looking for angles A, B, or C. Example, if we're looking for angle C, that's cosine C equals A squared plus B squared minus C squared all over 2AB. And it means that this one will be used for the cosine -1 function. Now let's try an example. Ready? Wait first. Given the angles and sides of a triangle, find its missing angle and side. Now, if you check, the given are 2 sides and 1 angle. So, because there are 2 sides and 1 angle, we will use the law of cosines. Again, the law of cosines is used for SAS, side angle side, and side, side, side. So how do we solve for that? Give me a moment. First thing is, for you to help you in visualizing the triangle, you can start drawing it. So for example, A, B, C. So the opposite of angle A is side A. A is 23.4. Next, the opposite of angle C, there is side C. That's 31.6. Then angle B is 63 degrees. That's side, angle, side. So we will now start looking for the other 2 angles and 1 side. Now, I suggest that you start with the missing angle. For example, here, angle A is missing. And since side A is given, then we can use that. Ready? Or another way is to start with the missing side. So here, B is missing. So there are 2 sides given, B is missing, so we can start with the missing side. Let's start solving for B. The formula is B squared equals A squared plus C squared minus 2, multiply this 2, AC cosine B. Okay, now that's 23.4 squared plus C is 31.6 squared minus 2, 23.4 times cosine C, 31.6 cosine of 63. Remember, we still have B squared on one side. So to get rid of the square, you could have the other side into a square root. So square root of one side, square root of the other side, all under one square root. So we'll just have B in the end. Now after that one, after substituting the values, you need to use your calculator. You start with a square root. You see here? Let me start typing. 23.4 squared plus 31.6 squared. I suggest that you Practice with your calculator while we're having a class today. 31.6 times cosine 63. There's the answer. The answer for B is 29.57. But again, you need to check. Based on the given sides, there's one decimal place. So we write our answer also in one decimal place. That's going to be 29.6. This is now the answer for B, 29.6. Now, if you have completed the three sides, then we can start solving for an angle. Example, let's solve for angle A. Let's have the formula again for angle A. That's cosine A equals B squared plus C squared minus A squared all over 2BC. That's going to be 29.6 squared plus, where's our C? There, 31.6 squared minus our A. Our A is 23.4 squared all over 2BC. 2 times 29.6 times 31.6. Let's use our calculator. Fraction first. 29.6 squared plus 31.6 squared minus 23.4 squared over 2 times 29.6 times 31.6. You copy that one first. But remember, give me a moment. 0.70943807732. But we are looking for A. So you use the cosine to the negative power. Here, you look at the calculator, what I will do. You press shift cosine, shift cosine, that's cosine to the negative one. And if you want the answer, shift cosine, then you type again the answer. 943807732. There. The answer is 44.81. But if you check with our given, we only have it in whole number. Therefore, we'll also write our answer for angles in whole number. We have that in 45 degrees. So A is 45 degrees. So to solve for C, no need to use the cosine again. Remember, what's the sum of all angles in a triangle? Can anyone share with me?
180.
80, very good. So A plus B plus C is equal to 180. So to solve for C, you just subtract A and B. That's 180 minus 63 minus 45. Then our C is equal to 72 degrees. Any questions? Now again, first step in the law of cosines, complete the three sides. After completing the three sides, solve for one angle, then use the sum of the three angles to solve for the last angle. Okay, let's go to the next example. Let me now erase it. No other questions? Let me clear it now. Let me check first my battery. Give me a moment. I'll just plug it. While I'll plug it, you can start solving for the next one. The given is 3 sides, so you start with an angle. Okay, now you start by drawing the triangle. Let's draw it here. A, B, and C. The opposite of angle A is side A. The opposite of angle B is side B. The opposite of angle C is side C. So we can start with an angle. Okay, let's solve for angle A. Remember, that's going to be cosine, but let me write another formula. It can also be A equals cosine to the -1. Okay, you can use that one. Cosine to the -1 of B squared plus C squared minus A squared over 2BC. So substitute cosine to the -1 of B squared. It's 45 squared plus 29 squared minus A, 32 squared over 2 times B times C. Once you're done substituting, you get your calculator and you type this whole thing. Now, your calculator will give you 2 possible errors. If your calculator says syntax error, it means you missed a parenthesis. It's an error in typing. But if your calculator says math error, it means that there is no possible solution. It's undefined. So be sure that we type it correctly, so you'll also get the correct answer. So press shift, cosine. It's cosine to the -1. Then we have a fraction. Start with 45 squared plus 29 squared minus 32 squared over 2 times 45 times 29. There. Your calculator says there's no given angle yet, so we can write it in 2 decimal places. The answer is 45.11 degrees. That is for A. Next, let's solve for B. The same. B equals cosine -1 times A squared plus C squared minus B squared. Now you might ask me, how did I memorize this? Here's a technique. If you're looking for B, then the added sides will be the one different from B. So A and C, you square it. Then you subtract its corresponding side, minus B squared. Over 2, you multiply the ones that you added, AC, there. So you have cosine to the -1 times A. 32 squared plus 29 squared minus the b, minus 45 squared over 2 times 32 times 29. Once you are done substituting, you get your calculators and type it. Shift cosine fraction. Let's type 32 squared plus 29, squared plus 29 squared minus 45 squared over 2 times 32 times 29. There. And remember, we write it in 2 decimal places. So our answer for B is 94.95 degrees. I now have my A. I now have my B. I'm looking for the C. Subtract them from 180. Okay, can anyone tell me what is the answer for angle C? What's the answer for angle C? Any answers? There, I've seen in the chat box. 39.94, very good. So we have 39.94 degrees. You now have your 3 angles. Any questions? So now, let us have a review again. If in the other problem, you are given 2 sides and 1 angle, you start with the last side. You complete the side. But if you're given 3 sides, you still use the law of cosines and start with the first angle. In the second angle, you still use the cosine. In the third angle, you simply subtract the angles from 180 degrees. Any questions? Or give me a thumbs up if you've understood our lesson. Very good. Let me first